Hey there, and welcome back, adventurers. Today we'll be going over the top 5 cheapest builds that can make you millions of silver. You can use these builds to kill mobs in the open world, in solo dungeons, and can be used in both safe and black zones. We will also discuss if they are viable for PvP. I'll be going over which items to use, which abilities to take, and what these builds exceed at. Before we get into the breakdown, make sure to join our community Discord. I have 30-day premium giveaways for both East and West servers. If you are newer to the game, it is a great place to ask questions and have discussions with our community members. Now, without further ado, let's get into the top 5 cheapest builds in Albion Online. At number 5, I have the bow. Now, the bow is a very strong ranged weapon that does a huge amount of consistent damage. You will do a great job at killing mobs in the open world, including empowered mobs. The bow does well in PvE and 1v1s in PvP. Not only will you have strong consistent damage, you will also be able to kite, chase down, and crowd control your enemies. Let's take a look at the items and abilities that you'll be taking for this build. For your bow, you will take the multi-shot as your first ability. This will provide you with the damage and crowd control that you need. You can knock back your enemies and deal physical damage in a cone in front of you. Now, multi-shot is a great way to interrupt mobs and enemy players. It will also give you room to better position yourself. Now, for your second ability, you have two options. If you're out in the open world and in a black zone, I'd recommend going with Frost Shot. This will shoot an arrow that explodes in a 4-meter radius and knocking you back by 13 meters. It will also do physical damage and slow the enemy that you hit. The reason I recommend Frost Shot is to have a large amount of mobility to either kite away or chase down your enemy players. It can take some practice to master, especially in high pressure situations, but I am sure that you can figure this out. The other option is Ray of Light, which does a large amount of damage and roots all enemies for 2.35 seconds. I like to use this when I am AoEing mobs down or I know I'm strong enough to take fights in PvP. For your E, which is your third ability, go ahead and take Enchanted Quiver, which enchants 6 of your arrows for the next 8 seconds. You will do increased damage with your attack and have increased attack speed. If you click your third ability once more, you will then vault and reset your enchanted arrows and enchant another 4. So make sure to use this properly to maximize your damage output. Another thing to know is that you will see a circle around you. If an enemy player is in that area, you will do a bit less damage to your enemy than you would do if they were outside of the circle. So try and kite and get the best positioning possible. For your passive, go with Energetic for the energy restore while you're out killing mobs. Now, for your helmet, you will go with the Hunter Hood. The Hunter Hood's ability, Retaliate, will provide you with Reflect, which reflects 85% damage for the next 3 seconds. Make sure to use this at the right time to gain the most benefit from it. You can use this in PvE and PvP. For the passive, I recommend Balanced Mind for the increased damage and healing. Now, your armor piece will be Mercenary Jacket. You will take Bloodlust for the increased lifesteal and sustain. Using your bow's E or 3 ability and enchanting your arrows will help you quickly heal with Bloodlust since you will sustain from your next 7 auto attacks. Now, your Mercenary Jacket's passive is Balanced Mind for the increased damage and healing by 4%. For your cape, I recommend going with a regular cape. If you want to spend some silver and can afford to do so, you can opt into taking the Thetford cape for the extra burst damage. Now, for your boots, I recommend the Soldier Boots. They will provide you with armor and mobility at a very cheap price. You will take Rejuvenating Sprint, which will increase your movement speed and health regeneration. Your passive will be Toughness, which increases your armor. If you have always wanted to play a ranged physical DPS weapon, this would be a very cost-efficient way to get started. Now, at number 4, I have the Witchwork Staff. The Witchwork Staff is part of the Arcane tree and does well in AoEing and clearing out mobs in the open world. It will also provide you with crowd control, movement, and the ability to fight 1v1s. It is one of my favorite weapons to play, and the outplay potential makes it absolutely fun. Let's get into the build. For your Witchwork, take Chain Missile for your first ability. It will shoot a chain missile to the targeted location, dealing damage to the first enemy that it hits, and then jump to the closest enemy within 7 meters, dealing a lower amount of damage to any additional target. An arcane charge will be placed on any target that is hit, which will be consumed whenever you deal direct damage to the affected target, dealing additional magical damage. Now, your second ability is Enigma Blade. This is where the fun starts. Enigma Blade combines up to 2 abilities, the first being a magical blade that hits all enemies in a cone, dealing a large amount of damage. If you hit one enemy, it will activate your second combo ability, which is Flicker. Using Flicker will teleport you to the targeted position, granting you immunity to damage for 0.2 seconds. So this is a great way to confuse, kite, or outplay your opponent as they attempt to close the distance or use their abilities on you. Now, for your third ability, it is Black Hole, which does damage and crowd control. You will create a black hole with a 6-meter radius at the targeted position, and after 1 second, and it will pull all enemies within the circle towards the center, dealing a large amount of damage and crowd controlling your enemies. This is a great way to set up a huge amount of AoE damage with Enigma Blade and your chain missile, since it will group all of your enemies together. Your passive is Lingering Power, since after casting any spell, it will increase your auto attack speed by 120% and your auto attack range by 33% for the next 3 auto attacks within 3 seconds. This is huge because you can easily kite around mobs and players to auto attack from a further distance that they can actually reach you. Now, for your helm slot, I recommend going with the Mage Cowl. Mage Cowl will provide you with Fire Breath, which makes a cone of fire and applies a damage over time effect. This is great to do when you have rounded up all of your mobs with Black Hole. Now, for your passive, take Aggression for the increased damage and healing by 3.5%. When it comes to your armor piece, I recommend going with the Mercenary Jacket. The Mercenary Jacket's Bloodlust will benefit from your first ability's Chain Missile, which buffs your next few auto attacks with attack speed. The attack speed will help you quickly heal up. For your passive, go with Balanced Mind for the increased damage and healing by 4%. Now, for your boots, it will be Soldier Boots for the extra movement speed and defense. Rejuvenating Sprint will also heal you over time. Make sure to take Toughness for your passive for the increased armor. Now, for your cape, like I mentioned with the bow, you can go with a regular cape, or if you would like to spend some silver, take the Theford cape for that extra damage. Now, for your offhand, you will go with Torch. Torch provides you with a cooldown rate and auto attack speed. Since this build relies on you to land chain missiles and auto attack in between your other abilities, this will really help you put out the most amount of damage. Now, at number 3, I have the Battle Bracers. The Battle Bracers do run a little bit more expensive, but you can get a good 4.1 build with under 65,000 silver. The Battle Bracers are my favorite when I'm out in the Black Zone farming mobs or gathering. They provide you with mobility, large burst damage, and are very good in PvP scenario. For your Battle Bracers first ability, you will go with Create Opening until you can unlock Dragon Leap. Create Opening is a combo ability which attacks your enemy for physical damage, and then the second attack does additional damage and decreases the damage resistance of your enemy. Once you've unlocked Dragon Leap, this will add mobility and crowd control. You will do large amounts of damage with combo attacks and crowd control multiple targets. You can also use this to escape if need be. For your third ability, it will be Falcon Smash, which makes you float into the air and become immune to all crowd control effects for 2 seconds. When you recast this ability, it will dive you forward and do physical damage based on the distance. The closer your enemy is, the more damage you will do. For your passive, go with Fatal Fury to start for the increased damage with every auto attack. Once you purchase a higher tier set of Battle Bracers, then make sure to use Hard to Catch for the crowd control resistance and damage resistance. Now, for your helmet, you will go with the Assassin Hood. You will take Meditation, which increases your cooldown rate by 80% while channeling for 2.75 seconds. The goal of this is to reset your third ability and major cooldowns to be able to deal more damage or escape faster. Your passive will be Balanced Mind for the additional damage and healing by 1.5%. Now, for your armor piece, you will take Cleric Robe. The Cleric Robe will provide you with the additional damage output since it is a cloth item. You will go with Everlasting Spirit, which will make you immune to damage for 3 seconds and increase your damage and healing by 20%. You can use this in 2 different ways. You can use this to immune yourself and use meditation to reset your other abilities without being interrupted, or you can use this to block out damage and increase your damage output by an additional 20% and burst mobs and players down quickly. Your passive will be Aggression for increased damage and healing by 8%. For your boots, you will go with the Assassin Shoes for Refreshing Sprint, which increases your movement speed by 80% and reduces your cooldown rate by 33.33%. The main goal of this build is to always have your third ability and large cooldown abilities to put out the most amount of damage or give you the most amount of mobility. For your passive, you will go with Balanced Mind for the increased damage and healing by 1.5%. Now, for your cape, I do recommend going with the normal base cape, or if you want to spend some silver, you can take the Avalonian cape for the burst damage in melee range. Now, at number 2, I have the Battle Axe. The Battle Axe is one of the most versatile builds out there. It provides you with large damage, crowd control, and sustain. It does well in soloing low and high level content and does well in PvP. I recommend getting good with this build and you'll be able to shine in multiple aspects of content, making you a lot of silver along the way. For your Battle Axe, you will start with Rending Strike for single target damage like empowered mobs, bosses, or PvP. This will do physical damage and apply a Rending Bleed charge. Each Rending Bleed charge deals damage over 6 seconds and stacks up to 3 seconds. Once you apply all 3 stacks, the enemy healing received will be reduced by 12%. If you're fighting large packs of mobs, then I recommend going with Rending Spin for AoE damage. As you purchase higher tier battle axes, you will unlock another very important ability. Now for your second ability, go with Adrenaline Boost, which increases your damage, movement speed, and auto attack speed for 7 seconds. For your third ability, it will be Blood Bandit. Blood Bandit has 2 charges and does damage and healing. The first axe throw will do physical damage and do more damage based on the amount of rending bleed charges they have. I would recommend holding onto the second charge of Blood Bandit unless you need to sustain and heal yourself. The second charge will do damage and heal you based off the number of rending bleed charges on your target. As you have noticed, it is very important to keep your rending bleed charges up on your enemies at all times. Now, for your passive, go with Deep Cuts. After 4 auto attacks, it will inflict the bleed on your target, dealing damage every 1.5 seconds. Now, for your helmet, you will go with the Hunter Hood and take advantage of Retaliation, which, like I mentioned before, will reflect 85% of damage for 3 seconds. Now, your passive will be Balanced Mind for the increased damage and healing. When it comes to your armor item, it will be the Mercenary Jacket. The Mercenary Jacket's Bloodlust ability pairs up perfectly with your auto attack speed increase from Adrenaline Rush and allows you to have even more sustain. So make sure to go with Balanced Mind for the increased damage and healing. Now when it comes to your boots, it will be the Soldier Boots for the increased armor and defense from toughness. You will also go with Rejuvenating Sprint for the increased movement speed and healing. Your offhand, you will go with the Torch for the increased cooldown rate and auto attack speed. I recommend taking the normal base cape. Like I mentioned before, if you want to spend some silver, go with the Avalonian cape for the melee burst damage. Now, at number 1, we have one of my favorite builds of all time and favorite tree, the Nature Staff. The Nature Staff build is the best build to solo mobs outside in the open world in both black and safe zones. It is the best build to solo high level solo dungeons, and it does great in the roads and abbeys. Now, it can even do well in PvP, unless of course someone with an insane amount of item power attacks you. It overall is the best solo PvE build, especially for new players. Let's talk about the abilities that you will take. So for your first ability, go with Thorn's Growth. Thorn's Growth has 3 charges and can be dropped in a 3-meter radius and lasts 4 seconds. Thorn does damage every half second and applies Thorn charges to all of your enemies. These Thorn charges can stack up to 5 times and slow your enemies by 25%. It is very important to auto attack with this build as it will pop the thorn charges on your enemy, dealing additional damage. Now for your second ability, I recommend going with Bramble Seed for the increased damage and crowd control. If you do find yourself needing extra healing or defense, then go ahead and go with Protection of Nature, which will increase your damage resistance and healing received for 6 seconds. Your third ability is Circle of Life, which deals damage, heals, and provides crowd control. You can heal up to 5 allies, and you will also root any enemy that has 3 or more thorn charges active on them, so it is very important that you always keep your thorn growth on the ground. For your passive, it will be Energetic to restore your energy with auto attacks. Now, for your helmet, I recommend going with the Mage Cowl. Mage Cowl's Fire Breath does a great job to provide AoE damage in a cone to all enemies that you're fighting. You can pair this up with Thorn Growth and Bramble Seed to do a huge amount of damage. Make sure to take Aggression for the increased damage and healing by 3.5%. Also, for your armor piece, you will go with the Mercenary Jacket. The Mercenary's Jacket will provide you with emergency sustain. If you find yourself taking too much damage or are in need of health, use Bloodlust to pair with your auto attack and quickly top yourself off. You will also go with Balanced Mind as your passive for the increased damage and healing. Now for your boots, you will go with the Soldier Boots. You will need increased armor and defense from toughness. You will also take Rejuvenating Sprint for the additional sustain and movement speed. For your cape, you can go with the base cape or a Thetford cape for extra damage. Now you will take Torch as your offhand for the increased cooldown rate and attack speed. This pairs up great with your Bloodlust ability. You may have noticed that these 5 builds share a lot of core items. I recommend focusing your mastery into these items as they will make you versatile and provide you with different builds to play for different scenarios. For your consumables, I do recommend going with Poison Potions to kill off empowered mobs or bosses, and I recommend using Catfish out in the open world. This will quickly heal you back up to full health once you leave combat. Now, I hope you enjoyed my top 5 cheapest builds you can use in Albion Online that will make you millions of silver. I stand by these builds as they have made me countless amount of silver that I've been able to share and give back to our community. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and join the Discord community. Like always, stay epic, stay legendary, and I'll see you in the next video.